Whoa. Am I on air? Okay. Hi, everyone. So today's Lynn show is my show. I'm taking over. Why? Because the two guests that we have today are actually two of my favorite people. So it's really cool that I get to interview them. Today, we're going to be talking about giving and giving time. So in general, in Judaism, like we know you're supposed to give 10% of your money, but do you actually know that you're supposed to give 10% of your time? According to many rabbis, or very important ones, we do need to give 10% of our time. What does that look like? Like, does that mean that if you're in the office and someone asks you for help, you're supposed to stop everything that you're doing to give of your time? I don't know. That's what the discussion is about. So I would like to discuss with these two people that we're going to have, Debbie Moed and Izzy Sakai, wonderful women, if this is an obligation. Is it a volunteer thing? What does this look like? How much time should you give? So first, let's discuss the concept of time according to Judaism. In the world, like we think of time as a linear thought, right? Like you think of the year as like, okay, January, February, March, April, May, June, July. But actually in Judaism, we don't think about it as a line. We think about it kind of like as a spiral. Rabbi Mendy made fun of me because he said he dares anyone to explain what a spiral is without going like this with your finger. So the idea in Judaism is that time was created in a continuum, but it happens over and over and over again. So the question then becomes, who are you today vis-a-vis who you were last year today? Not kind of like a straight line going forward, but in comparison, how are you going up? So if we know we have a finite number of days, of minutes, of seconds, of years, what do we choose to do with our time? On that note, I'm going to invite over Izzy Sakai, our first guest. Originally from Great Neck, she studied international business at George Washington University. After college, she worked as an international insurance broker. And after a little over a year, she went to Israel, came back, and decided to start working full-time in nonprofits. So she does research development for the JDC, Joint Distribution Committee, where she still works today. But aside from that, she volunteers in a number of different organizations. Hi, Izzy. Where are you at?
Bianca.
Hola tú. How are you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. Thank God. So first of all, thank you for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
We have these battles between us often, but never on camera. So thanks for agreeing.
No pressure this time.
No. You look great. Okay. But the first question from me to you is, when did you realize that you wanted to give to causes that you love? And when did you realize that that was important to you?
So when I think when I first realized that I wanted to do give back in a place that I really love, it was probably the beginning of college when I started to understand that. I had a friend who actually was recruiting a bunch of us to swab for a bone marrow registry called Gift of Life. And at the time, I had no idea what that was. And I kind of just agreed to do it because it was obviously something that meant something to her and it was affecting her personally. And after I did it, I kind of didn't think about it much, but the organization kept creeping back up at me and I kept seeing more about them and learning more about them. And I kind of realized it was this amazing opportunity to get involved in something where I can actually take part in saving other people's lives. It's literally, the organization called Gift of Life, and their mission is to actually find a match, a bone marrow match for somebody who otherwise has no other chance at surviving when they're fighting certain blood diseases. So I think for me, it was just this obvious moment of why wouldn't I start giving back to something if I could have that much of an impact? Yeah.
That's very cool. So if you were, what did you ever volunteer before college?
Here and there. I mean, thank God I grew up in a home where giving back was always emphasized. So it was giving money, giving time. So I grew up in that environment. I think I was thinking about this. The earliest memory I have is when I did a bat mitzvah project, which some people might have done or remember, might ring a bell. In those very awkward early teenage years. And basically, we raised money by selling candy. We ended up setting up shop in Hebrew school and a few other places. I don't remember how much we raised, but we raised money and then we went out and bought gaming systems for a children's hospital so that the children that were there would have something to do and something to entertain them. And I remember it was very meaningful because at the time we took 2 months to plan this out, how we were going to go shopping. We took a trip to Costco. We set up a few days after Hebrew school and I got our friends involved. And then we actually went and donated the gifts ourselves. So it was probably my earliest memory.
I love that story, but I just want to go back for a second to these pictures that are popping up because
Um,
I love how you became the poster child of Gift of Life. I feel like I personally got involved because you got me involved, and I sent it to a ton of people because you are so passionate about it and you care about it so much. You do a great job at presenting it to people. So, how did you become this poster child?
poster child is a strong word. I think I just it felt very natural to like continue being involved with Gift of Life. So when I was a freshman in college, I had swabbed for them. And after I had swabbed, I had done it for like in particular because a friend, had asked us to kind of step up. And I got a phone call from Gift of Life like a few months later, and they were, hi, this is Gift of Life. We're calling for Izzy Sakai. We wanted to know if you wanted to stay in the bone marrow registry. And I wasn't a match for anyone at the time. And they were just asking, they check up on you to make sure that if you're in the registry, you'll actually donate if called upon. And I answered the guy. I remember it was like in the morning, and I was just like, I don't know. What if they call me for a random person? I don't want to do it. So I told them, I was like, you can take me out. Somehow or another, I didn't get taken out. And not only did I get taken out, I started like getting emails from them all the time, and I ended up getting an email. It was around my junior year, I think, at this point, to sign up for it to be a campus ambassador. So they were trying to set up this program, which was absolutely incredible and still exists today, where they would have individual representatives on every campus and at least one college in every state across the country. So there ended up being about 100 of us in the cohort that I joined. And we would basically go around campus and just ask people to swap. And we would advocate for them and speak on their behalf. So I would go to sororities, I would go to fraternities, I would go to clubs. I would stand in the middle of campus, like in front of the library, and just literally stop people and say, do you have a second to save a life? I think we would say, do you have a minute? You'd be surprised. Many people say no, but many people say yes. And it's
But
really
I feel like many people say no because they're terrified. Like, if I say yes, does that mean that you're going to cut me open and do
right? No. So it's a lot of education because it used to be that way, and the process has come very, very far to the point that only 10% of the time do you actually have to go through the surgery. 90% of the time, it's like donating blood. Imagine like you spend a day, you sit, and like now Gift of Life has an amazing, amazing kind of institution that they built specifically for this. You sit there for a day, and you essentially give like, it's kind of your plasma. Don't take my word on that, but something to that effect, and then your stem cells are given to the individual that it's a need, and you save their life. Like it's absolutely incredible. You take one day of kind of discomfort, maybe taking some time to just do this one little act. It's obviously not little, and you save someone's life. So it's absolutely incredible. And thank God after college, I had many opportunities to stay involved and do more back in New York and continue to do so.
So it sounds you don't just work for the JDC full time. You also you practically lead like double lives. You don't just work full time for the JDC.
No.
Yeah, you like work full time for a nonprofit and then volunteer full time for not just Gift of Life, but also more. You're super involved in all these different causes. It kind of sounds like Gift of Life chose you, but then Meor, for example, or other causes that you're involved with, if someone wants to volunteer, and if someone, first of all, I would like to ask you, why do you think people should volunteer? And do you think people should volunteer? And after that, once they decide yes or no, if they say yes, how do they choose what to volunteer for? How did you choose?
So one thing in terms of like choosing time and whatnot and how to give back. So it's always like an ebb and flow. I'm not necessarily like consistent in every organization that I'm involved with and the time that I give, and it comes and goes kind of as I'm able to do so. And a lot of times it is like, it's kind of when it chooses me and when it speaks to me and when an opportunity is there and I try and jump at it. Something I have to work at, honestly. I do like to give back, and it makes me excited. It makes me feel fulfilled. But I think it's always important to like emphasize that this stuff does take work at the same token. And it's something though that I think when you consciously choose it, the meaning is that much stronger and it brings you back, if that makes sense. So I don't, it's not necessarily that it always comes so natural and it's like, oh, I'm just going to always give all my time to things. No, like I really do work at it, but it's worth it to me. And I see the ripple effect it has, like you said, because you hear me speak about Gift of Life, like, that makes you want to do something, give back. And I've had that instance with a lot of people, and it's been amazing. And it's not necessarily that you always have to be doing so much. Sometimes it's just advocating, saying something, and that touches another person, and you don't even know what they're doing somewhere else because of what they heard you say. that.
Yeah, no, it's funny because you were talking and it made me think of the story that Rabbi Mendy told me. I had a very intense conversation with Rabbi Mendy about this session. I love it from him. But he told me it was actually it's a cool story. There was this very big let's call this wealthy person in this city town. I'm sorry, here I'm translating from Spanish to English. So there we go. There was this very wealthy person in a town, and the story goes that everyone used to come to him to ask him for money. And he would sit and he would listen to them for like 45 minutes, an hour, whatever it is. And at the end of it, he'd be like, oh, that's interesting. He would ask so many questions. He'd be so interested. Everyone would go to him, like all the poor people, everyone that was coming to ask for money, everyone that had their own causes, their own initiatives, they would just come to him and ask him for money. And I promise this will tie back into time. And they would just come and ask him for money, and he would just listen for an hour, and then he would just give them like a copper. So let's say you took like an hour of my time and gave me like a penny, let's say, or whatever it is. And people would be like, what? This is insulting. They would just throw it back at him. They'd be like, okay, thank you. Like, no, thank you. And they just leave like so perplexed that this person just took a whole hour from their lives and really had all the means and didn't give them anything. So there came this very big rabbi to the same town, asking for money for this girl that wanted to get married and couldn't afford a wedding. So she comes to the town. He comes to the town. He meets with every wealthy person, and they don't introduce him to this guy because they said, Rabbi, you're not going to waste your time. This guy's not going to give you any money. He doesn't give money to anyone. The rabbi says, no, I want to meet him. Great. So they thought, okay, so go meet the man. Like, you're not going to get anything. The rabbi comes, he sits, he speaks for an hour. Everyone asks him questions, all these things. At the end of it, after the man asks him all these questions and like, why do you want it? How do you want it? Why can't she do it? Whatever it is, he gives him a penny. And the rabbi takes it and he says, thank you very much. Like, thank you very much. May you be blessed. Leaves. Everyone just looks at the rabbi like, what? 2 seconds later, the wealthy guy just runs to the door and says, Rabbi, wait a second. Here's $5. The rabbi says, thank you very much. May you be blessed. Keeps walking. Corner. Guy runs after him. Like, oh, wait a second. You know what? Here's $100. Take it. Thank you so much. Maybe keeps walking. By the time he gets to the end of the street, the guy says, Rabbi, you know what? I'll just pay for the whole wedding. Everyone's around him being like, what did you just do? How did you just do that? And the rabbi said, you don't understand. This man always wanted to give. He just didn't have the opportunity to give because no one was taking his penny. So it's kind of like tied to what you were just saying right now. I brought it in because it's the idea that when you give, you kind of want to give back and back and back. And it's not so easy to give the first time, right? Like if you have so many things to do, giving your first hour is not so easy. But then once you give, you keep wanting to come back. So my question to you, and with this, I'm going to let you close it up. My question to you is, like, now that we're all kind of like locked in and people aren't really seeing each other, how can we give people the opportunity to give of their time or of whatever they want to give, being at home? How can we enable people to really see what's out there and see the power that they have in making the world a better place?
So I think it's a loaded question because there's a lot of ways in terms of what I'm aware of. For example, Gift of Life right now, through the end of this week, they're doing a virtual 5K. So you can join. I'm happy to send the link out. You could join my team, or you can join really any team, and you just run a 5K on your own, and you donate $60, and that provides enough money for one kit to be tested, which is huge. This is one like swab kit that then could potentially be a match for someone. Another example, so I work at JDC, which is a Jewish humanitarian organization. Very blessed to be able to not only volunteer time, but work in a place where I feel like I'm constantly able to make a difference in that sense. And they have lots of online programs for the younger community. I believe recently they launched something where you can like kind of a phone, set up a phone service where you can call elderly individuals overseas and speak to them, to help with combating loneliness and all of that. And you should go to their website, jdc.org. They have some other amazing opportunities and just events. So just hear and learn about what's happening in the Jewish world, especially like outside of our own backyard. I think it's important to remind ourselves and see, who else is in need.
So you're saying really just like you're encouraging people to just open their eyes and their ears and be in tune with whatever's around them.
And if you can't, your question of like, does everyone have to give time? If you can't give time, giving time sometimes feels like a burden or like it's like such a heavy ask. But it could even be as small as just advocating. Post something, share something, share a video that means something, touches you, asking people to look at it and learn more. That's doing something. We talk about influencers today. Everyone's an influencer. So if giving your time and getting out there and doing something is too much for you, do something small. Don't put pressure on yourself.
I love that. Thanks, Wiz. I feel like you and I, we can go about this for hours. So thank you so much for being on the show. Really enjoyed your perspective. I hope that everyone listening did too. If anyone wants to reach out, Izzy is the most awesome person in the world. And I'm sure you'd like to, tell them what opportunities are available to them. Right?
Happy to.
Cool. I just volunteered you. Awesome. Thanks. It's good to have you on the show. And hey, see you soon. Okay. Hi, everyone. So that was Izzy Sakai. Awesome person. Would love to continue to speak with her, but right now I had to say goodbye because we have our next guest on the show, and that is Debbie Moed, a dear friend I met years ago in Israel. Actually, when I went for my first day to the Bakum to draft for the army in Israel. Debbie has worked for nearly 40 years at Sotheby's, getting her BA in Fine Arts from NYU. And over the last several decades, she has given of her time and held numerous leadership positions in the Jewish community. She's the immediate past president of Amit, the third largest educational network in Israel, educating and nurturing over 37,000 children. She currently gives her time as a senior advisor for Young Leaders Division of the Conference of Presidents of major American Jewish organizations. So with big pleasure, I would love to welcome Debbie Moed to the show. Hi, Debbie.
Hi.
How are you?
Great. What a tough act to follow. Izzy is awesome.
I'm giddy because I could have not had better people to discuss this with. I said that I could speak for hours with Izzy, but I feel like every time you and I speak, we also just never stop. So really excited to have you on the show. How are you?
Good. Jet lagged.
Jet lagged? Okay. Well, yes. Hopefully we can keep it entertaining. Same. I just got up. I'm like, oh, okay. So Debbie, I will start with the same question that I started with Izzy, which is how did you realize that donating your time was important to you?
Well, I grew up in a home where my parents were constantly giving up their time to many, many different causes, local causes. My dad was the president and the chair and the day school in the synagogue multiple times. My mom chaired the sisterhood, the PTA. At that time it was much more gender specific. She also volunteered as a teacher, a reading teacher in public school. So they really were involved in many, many things. So it was pretty much a natural thing for me. This picture shows my parents were founding members of the Holocaust Museum and Education Center in Rockland County where they live, which has now become a major must to stop for public school students to give them exposure to Holocaust studies. So they've really done a lot of amazing things, and so it was sort of in the DNA.
Wow. Okay, so I would like to ask you, first I would like to ask you, how do you choose the causes that you donate your time to? Because you're saying basically that the reason you decided that donating your time is important is because it was an example that you saw at home. Like for your parents, it was important. And I guess that you saw the gratification that brings. But then once you decide that's important, how do you decide what to donate to?
Well, I think it's really, really important to think about what your focus is. Right here, this is interesting. When I was thinking about what's important to me, because there are so many worthy causes, I arrived at education and leadership development. So Amit was a perfect fit for me. The picture here is my first dinner as president in 2015, and I called over all the past presidents, and they were actually very surprised that I asked them to be in the picture. And I think it was just perfect because we really have to sit on the shoulders of the people before us. We learn from them, and then we move on and we try to do dynamic, interesting things. Well, that's just my mom. Who was a very big role model and who came to every single Amit dinner, even though she hated dinners very badly. Dinners are good.
Great, by the way. It's one of my, people ask me before, what what does the scene, the Jewish scene or social scene in New York look like? And I say it's a lot of galas. And at some point it just becomes social. And sometimes we just miss the plot. Like, it's very nice that we're donating by going to these galas, but like, actually, what are we achieving? Like, what are we even doing? I have to tell you that of my favorite events that I have been to in New York since I moved was the Amit Gala. I don't think
Awesome.
any other organization did a more incredible job at showing how it's so important. It was while you were president, so I can imagine that you had a lot to
We
do with
have
it.
a great virtual one coming up in November, and everyone should definitely sign up. It's going to be very cool because we always showcase our students, and that's what's really, really important.
That's very cool. So would you say that Amit kind of like arrived to you, or how did you come to Amit?
Basically, at the time that I was a young mother in Englewood, New Jersey, this was what people did. Like, it was a social outlet. So there was a meeting every month in somebody else's home, and of course, the best houses to go to were the ones that were newly renovated. So that's why I was asked. And as soon as the then chapter presidents walked through the door, and I came up with a few ideas for them, they're like, "Okay, great. You're in charge of that." And that's how it started. I started on a local level and then moved on to a national level.
Wow, it's insane. Also, I totally like fact check this, and it's 41,000 students.
Exactly. I didn't want
That's
to
huge.
interrupt the flow, but yes, the network has been growing exponentially, and it's very, very gratifying that it's
Yeah.
not just our core base of modern Orthodox schools that we're serving. Now we also have some Haredi programs, and we're making inroads in the secular schools as well, which is really important because it's for all of Israel.
So I have a question for you. Well, clearly I have a question for you. I have many questions for you tonight. So, what if you had to say, like, looking back, you're very interested in leadership development, you're very interested in education, which we share. So I'm like very passionate about everything that you do. But if you could look at the world and say, like, I want to leave my mark and anything is possible, what is the impact that you would like to make, to have?
I think looking at what we have been accomplishing at Ami, it's just apparent that every child is born with limitless potential. But unfortunately, not every child is given the same opportunities to achieve that potential. And so I would like to work and give everything that I can to create a world where each child is given the tools and the opportunities that they need to reach their utmost potential. And in fact, so many things that we take for granted when we go into development towns, into places where unfortunately the parents are working too many jobs to be able to really pay attention to their kids' education. Um, it's apparent that not all kids even know how to dream and how to think of goals because those adults are not modeling the behavior that we would just take for granted or as we would do as parents. So, for instance, this picture, well, now we just passed, thank you. Um, you can see to my right are two guys. So the one on the far right is Amnon Eldar, Dr. Amnon Eldar, who's the director general of the entire Amit network. But in between us is Moshe Uziel. Now, Moshe and his sister, Miri, were dropped off when he was 7 and she was 5 at Bet Hayeled, which is one of Amit's surrogate family homes, because his father was in jail, he was an alcoholic, and mother turned to drugs, and she just couldn't handle it. Moshe and Miri grew up in our Amit system until high school age. They lived at this surrogate family home in Jerusalem, and then they moved to our larger campus in Petah Tikva. And then Moshe, when he went into the army, came home to the dorm on that campus because that was his home. And he felt very proud that he was modeling this kind of behavior for the other boys who didn't have fathers or uncles or brothers who were in the army, because the army doesn't accept everybody, only people who clearly can be reliable citizens. So in the end, what this picture is representing is the dedication of the Amit Junior College that teaches boys to diagnose and repair very sophisticated automotive equipment. And Moshe has become the director of that whole entire program.
So full circle.
So you see what
That's
opportunity can do. And in the end, in 2017, my mom and our family made a gift to this junior college to name the program after my parents. And so it all comes full circle. And it's something that is very, very meaningful. It's meaningful to my family. It's certainly meaningful to Moshe. And Moshe and Miri and I have become very, very close over the years.
So it first of all, wow, amazing story, and such a great thing to witness. Like, to really be able to see the difference that you make in someone's life, and you speak about it, and you kind of like glow up. You're glowing. It's like you can see that you enjoy what you do and that you feel so rewarded. So, based on that, would you say that everyone should donate their time? Do they have an obligation to donate their time, or is it just a recommendation because people would feel better if they did?
I really do think that people have an obligation to be accountable to more than themselves and even more than their immediate family or their friends. Because if you look around at the beginning, I think it's very natural when you're young to focus inward and to focus more on your community, give your time to your synagogue, your kids' schools, all your local things. And at a certain point, I think it's really great to be able to look outward with a broader lens and really see what's going on and see what's going on in the world around us. And there's so many, as we said before, worthy things to choose from. I think it's really great to be able to zero in on one or two causes or organizations that speak to you. So here are two amazing people who are involved, Alana and Alex, who are involved in Amit, who started Amit Future Leaders Initiative, which was our college age division at Amit, and they were building it, and they have since gone on to young leadership and even the next step, which is new gen. Alana now has moved out of town. She lives in Florida and she works for Amit, and Alex is a board member. So it's really, really gratifying that I forged these friendships. One of my kids likes to say, "Mom, they're not your friends. Like, they're just being nice to you." But we really, really do have fun together, and we're building something together. And just the gratification that you get from giving up your time and from knowing that you're making an impact on somebody's life is just amazing.
I love that picture because also your daughter-in-law is there.
Yes, Zoe in red.
Yeah.
And Grace. And this was from years ago from a Young Leadership Bash. So you can also have fun when you're giving your time, because everything requires an event to raise money for whatever organization you're passionate about, and so you can have a good time to do it also.
That's awesome. I love that message. Thank you. So hopefully we'll do something together, and hopefully soon in person, and we can invite people to come and have fun and donate up their time and hear more. So if you had to close with one message for our generation, if you had to say something that you want people that are taking over, let's say, young leadership divisions of all these different organizations, what would your message be?
I think that's a pretty loaded question, but I think that it's very, very easy, especially now where there's so much noise and there's so much that is pulling us in different directions. It's very, very easy to say,
"Oh my gosh, Ayala Chaked is on screen." Sorry. Ayala Chaked. I was like,
yes. Well, you get to see fun people too. I'll explain that in a second. But I think that there's so much noise, and there's just a lot to pull us in different directions. And it's very, very easy to sit on the sidelines and say, you know what, I don't have time, or they should be doing something this way, or they should be doing that. And instead of looking at them, just get up and do it. Like, know that you can have an impact on something, even yourself, even if you think that you're only one person. If you're working on something that you believe in, that you feel strongly about, by all means, just get up and do it.
Love that. I really, really love that. Thank you, Debbie, so much for coming on the show. We really appreciate it. Really, no, and thanks for having that on.
Right.
I feel like you met with the entire cabinet.
You do get to meet influential people. And if you use your platform, that was Naftali Bennett, who at the time was the education minister, and my husband Sam. So if you play your cards right, you get to be in a room with important people who can influence things. And if, you can make your case.
Well, and I have to say that, Sam was just on screen and you just like, I feel like your entire family is such an example of everything that you've been saying. Like Sam has been an amazing mentor to people that I know that have told me that their life has been changed entirely after one conversation with Sam, which was just like incredible that he will just take time out of his incredibly busy schedule to do that. And I know that Eric and Kayla also volunteer a lot and are super involved. So I think that you are passing it down just like your parents passed it down. And that's a beautiful example. So yeah, really, thank you so, so much. And we'll continue the conversation. And really, thanks for your message.
Thank you.
Okay, guys, so you heard a little bit about the importance of donating your time, but what does that actually mean? Does it mean that you actually need to take a full chunk of time in order to donate aside from what you do? Do you need to dedicate your entire life to it? Or is it as simple as if you're in your office and you're, I don't know, in finance and you're working and don't have time, but you're like super involved in what you're doing, but then someone that's junior to you comes over and says like, bro, really need your help. I'm so lost here. That's could be considered donating time. So maybe we don't have to think so big. We can just think smaller and in our circles, and we will always find that there's people around us that we can help. And that's also time that we're giving. So thank you for tuning in. Thank you for listening. The Lynn Show happens every Wednesday, usually with Rabbi Lynn, unless I take over again, at 8 p.m. live on Facebook. We're also starting to do more in-person events at the JC in New York City. So if you're in New York City, please, please, please reach out. My email is bianca@mayormanhattan.org. Happy to answer your questions, happy to meet up and tell you what else we have going on. We have morning classes on Zoom for those that are early risers and have busy schedules. We have evening classes on Zoom and in person, one-on-ones, social events, hopefully eventually trips. So looking forward to seeing you soon, and thank you for your time. Here we go now.